Hello, I'm Trevor Lai in Shanghai. China's reputation as a global powerhouse isn't limited to economic growth. Its ad industry has hit some milestones, starting with China's first ever gold line in 2008, won by TBWA at the Cannes Lions Film Festival for an Adidas campaign. DDB won China's second gold line in 2010 for the China Environmental Protection Foundation campaign. This year, JWT won China's first Grand Prix in Cannes with a Samsonite ad. And recently, JWT's Lo Shengyan, Executive Creative Director for Northeast Asia and China Chairman, was named the first Chinese jury head at Cannes. This week on Thoughtful China, we'll look at what it takes for Chinese agencies to match the best work in the West and what makes a great ad here. Plus, our own PT Black will share his thoughts about the path ahead for creativity in China. But first, with us is Dick Van Motman, DDB Group President and CEO, Greater China. Dick, you moved to China nearly 6 years ago when DDB was struggling, and now it's one of the top agencies in the field. You've got a whole team of strong creatives, including Michael D., Victor Ng. Tell us what's changed in the time that you've been here.
What's changed in terms of the agency?
Correct, and the types of change you've seen in the marketplace.
I think obviously the marketplace has grown tremendously from all perspectives. Client side, China was important, and it's become even more important in the past 6 years, and definitely now with all the troubles in the West. Agency-wise, that has its impact, because if it becomes more important for clients, definitely becomes more important for agencies. A lot of growth behind digitization, also a lot of growth that is not necessarily behind the West, but very much on par with the West. And with respect to DDB, we of course had a phenomenal growth where we, you called it struggling. I would say we had a different strategy for China previously, where China serviced out of Hong Kong with basically a rep office in China, which we changed 6 years ago and said we're gonna really gear up our efforts, and I think that was rather successful, and we've enjoyed a very good ride.
And so while you were gearing up, what was the hardest part about recruiting top talent here?
Obviously, the fact that we were not, a real established player in China didn't help that much. But as I always say, DDB is a great brand globally, and therefore we have both an obligation, but also a natural right to play in China because of our heritage. And so taking the brand, building the culture, and the culture which is very much centered around people, talented and nice, that was one of the key cornerstones of building.
It's a little bit chicken and egg, right? As you said, at that point you weren't really an established player, and yet you want to bring in these cornerstones of your team that could build that culture. So what were some of the techniques, or what were some of the strategies that you deployed that were obviously very successful?
I think what a lot of people don't know about me, but I actually did both economics and sociology, actually organizational sociology. And so, how organizations work really fascinate me. And there are a couple of things that we need to play with. One is, this is a developing market. I always say there's a lot of talent in China. There's not enough talent to cope with the growth. So how do you then construct an organization that is relevant for the market, but also can bring best in practice globally to those clients that you need to service here, which happen to be for us at the first stage predominantly international clients. So you start building, I would say, on some key positions. You start putting in people that I call kind of binding molecules, if you will, that can attract other people, and that can be the continuity for you in building the culture, in building the size, and also to allow for a natural, let's say, return of, a lot of flow-through of talent, because you will have a lot of flow-through of talent on certain levels. That's inevitable. That's in line with what the marketplace is about. But I think I spent probably in the first few years 70% of my time on HR, interviewing people constantly, including in the weekend. And every interview is a way to get the message out. So a way to get, if the person doesn't want to join, or you think that person is not right for you at that point of time, that person is still a transmitter for you to get the message out and say, well, these guys are serious. This is what they want to be about, and that also helps. It's all part of a bigger evangelization.
Right. So, like a lot of international executives, you probably hit the ground running, and at some point, you probably started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. What was for you the turning point in your time?
I'd say the most scary part actually is the fact that when you go back to your global management and you say, you know what, the plan that I delivered first time, forget it. It's absolute. I don't know what I was doing. I'm from Amsterdam, so probably you will think I was smoking something, but no, that was absolutely wrong. And then to set yourself a goal that is bigger than 1 year. And I think the best thing that I've done is go back to my management and say, this is not about 1 year plan, this is about a 5-year plan. And we're going to cut it in these parts for measurability, because in the end of the day, every plan needs to be measured and you need to be held accountable. I think that was the most scary part, to set yourself goals and to vision something in a market that is a bit foreign to you. I've been in Asia for about 17 years, so I've worked in China for quite a lot, but it's still a bit foreign. And to set yourself those goals and objectives, and then to try and make them happen, especially also in terms of talent, the type of people that you want to attract, the type of clients. I think that was the most scary part and the most difficult part of the whole equation.
So even before it became a buzzword in Silicon Valley, you were already performing a pivot, for your business, and really, noticing that something was probably not going right and being able to change that.
Well, I was 2 months in the job, and I had my first budget meeting, and obviously, like every eager beaver, you think you need to deliver a great plan, but in the end of the day, it's about something that really works and that's good for the organization. And I think the nice part about DDB, they live up to one of their principles, which is entrepreneurship with accountability. So they say, okay, if that's what you think and you believe in, and you've basically argued it well and got the right foundation blocks for the plan, then okay, go and make it happen.
So speaking of creativity and pushing the boundaries a little bit, what's the hardest part about getting clients and your agency team to create great creative work?
I think in the end of the day, I got a client which I've known for about 20 years, and he's got this great quote with his own people, where he says, nowadays you have a tier of agencies where they perform their performance is pretty similar. They've all got their pluses and minuses, but basically they're up there. There's a top tier. Let's call it the Premier League. So what you get out of the agency depends on how you manage them. So I think that's a very pivotal part of the relationship. Then the other part is building that relationship to such a trust level that both organizations allow for risk. And both organizations know how to deal with what needs to be delivered, but also build in the right amount of time and resource for experimentation. And I think that's something that is the recipe. Trust in the end of the day, allow people to take risk.
So in terms of taking risk, can you give us a concrete example where you've really pushed your creative team and they've delivered something that maybe was scary to the client or even to yourselves at first, but then you followed through and saw some real results?
I think the corporately correct answer is to say every day.
But what's the real answer?
The real answer, to be honest, I think it's in cases where we're doing integration and where we are saying it needs to be one leader from the account group. And sometimes it's a leader that not necessarily comes from the above the line. It comes either from our tribal unit or from our rep unit. And those are big risks that I think we take because it kind of changes the balance of thinking. It changes that concept of there being a mainstream agency. And so I think the biggest risk that I've taken together with the group is to go and build DDB, tribal, and rep together at the same time. Because I believe that for a marketplace like China, where you We have to deal with a myriad of complexities, be it media inflation, be it covering various tiers of the market, being at a high level of digital. It's much more about innovation and being idea-centric than it's being about a mainstream agency supported by, other disciplines.
Right. So, but as we all know, everyone really talks about, especially when they have the various divisions, about this integrated, holistic approach. But I think the difference is, as you said, you have a certain element of accountability built into your culture. Can you give us a concrete example of a client that you've made a difference for using and executing on this approach?
Client that we're making a difference for, I think we are making a difference for clients like Volkswagen, where we do integrated approaches now, where we both do digital and above the line, and where the idea is basically it's being approached from an idea-centric point of view before you go into the respective communication disciplines. We do it on Philips, where we have a completely integrated account team, and where we've seen a tremendous amount of organic growth, and where we actually have become a global center of excellence in the case of mobile and the case of digital. So there are various, I would say there are various approaches, various clients that we've done it for.
So with these international clients, you've obviously seen a landscape of the work they're doing in other markets and also having a direct comparison to what you're doing for them here in China. Where do you think China ranks in terms of the global creative market?
Well, it's interesting. Last year we had a real legend visiting us, Nizam from Brazil, DDB, DM9, and a great entrepreneur, and his agency won over 50, 60 Lions. And when I introduced him, of course I was ill-prepared and had to come up with something last moment, but then it struck me, I said, Brazil is a market of, 180 million people? But in terms of where it performs in the creative ranking is very high up. And if you see China, 1.3 billion people, second or third largest advertising market in the world, it's not, it's not the same ratio as Brazil has. So China has a long way to go. Now, having said that, I know that there's a lot of talk going about Chinese creativity is not up to the level of other markets. I think sometimes it is. Some pieces of work are absolutely brilliant. There's also an element of, whether people at award shows can judge it appropriately, because like it or not, still a lot of the juries of advertising shows in Cannes, in London and all that, there's still a very big number of Western jury members in there. But I think there's a lot of innovation when it comes down to speed to market, different business models, different ways of working. And as I said earlier, like for instance on Philips, we're a global center on mobile. On McDonald's, we have pioneered really interesting digital work as well. That is even written up in the Harvard Business Review. So from that perspective, I think creativity needs to be seen in a much broader field than just the ad that is brilliant or award-winning.
Right, and at the same time, when you look at Philips or Volkswagen or McDonald's, these are huge international corporations with decades of this experience of pushing the boundaries. I mean, you must find it much more difficult when you're working with a local client to push those same boundaries.
Well, we have a selective number of local clients. I always like to say that the list might not be big, but we had the ultimate client with Made in China, where we did the first ever campaign to basically improve the image of Made in China. I'm not at liberty to talk about it elaborately. I had to sign a few papers, but I'd say what struck me there in working with the Ministry of Commerce is that those people are tremendously smart, very open-minded, know very well the difference between an execution and a strategy and a long-term platform. And though the project lasted for more than 2 years, where we had to change tack and because of certain events that occurred during those 2 years, it was unbelievably interesting to work with them. And we've got some other local clients. I think again similar to what we talked about in talent. There's a lot of good talent here, just not enough, and that's the same thing for our Chinese companies. There's a lot of good Chinese companies and a lot of Chinese companies that are still finding their way, and they don't necessarily have to play by the same rules and standards as we might think coming from somewhere else. And I think that's what the world is slowly learning as well, that the world is changing, the standards, the rules are changing, and they don't necessarily are being made up in one continent anymore.
So it's interesting, you're saying in a way the world is kind of catching up to China in some respects.
In some respects, I think so, yeah. I think.
Is that why you think China doesn't win the global ad awards in huge numbers yet? Is it a matter of the audience not understanding? Like you mentioned,
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination. It's also a level of how we package our work. I think there's an extra mile that we need to go to make sure that juries, when they judge the work, that they understand that work much quicker. And sometimes I would say the ingenuity and innovation or creativity is not so much in how it looks or just that message, but in the total construct. I always say that I know Weibo is much over-talked, but if you look at Weibo, it's a much better version of Twitter. And that goes for a lot of digital assets here in China. And so if you then dig into it and how that is being applied and how geo-targeting can be done, there's a lot of ingenuity in that. And I think that's often overlooked or not well packaged.
So what is the biggest mistake you've made in your time in China?
What is my biggest mistake in my time in China? That's a good one. I think I still have to make it.
So there's nothing that you would ever say, I could have done that better, or I wish I didn't do that, or I wish I'd moved faster on that, or.
It's good to learn from the past. It's not good to go and wallow in the past because it doesn't get you anywhere. And if I made a mistake or if I stepped on somebody's toes, I think the best way to take care of it is by doing a better job next time. So I like to be a little bit more future-oriented. There's probably talent that I said, maybe I should have acted faster on that, or I should have made certain changes more quicker. But the nice thing about working in China is there's so much opportunities to rectify. And I think one of my first bosses said it very well. He said, quick decisions allow you more time to rectify them. So we try to make quick decisions and then change them. So hopefully I will be spared from a very, very big mistake. But we all learn from them day to day.
So tell us something we don't know about DDB China.
Tell us something we don't know about DDB China. I think we're a very happy place. I hope that nobody posts the opposite. But no, I think what's really touching is last week we were at a global pitch, and so I was with a team of 4 people in Europe, and a few hours just before the pitch, we got a video of the whole agency cheering us on, and I think that is, you couldn't ask for more. So when I saw that, and I wrote back a note to the agency and said, I said, it's one to lead an operation. It's another thing that it is being felt, and that the culture and that the collectiveness and passion is being felt in everybody. And nobody instructed you to cheer us, but you guys did that. And I think the culture is very important. And if you want to have one specific point beside that, I think what a lot of people don't know is that we really invest a lot in people and talent development. We have 2 talent directors, senior people for the whole group, and we have an executive coach for the management team and for the second layer, because we believe that people's lives are bigger than their jobs, and we create happy people. We create happy employees, and they will be more productive. So all the other stuff about award winning and about people who speak and the people who judge, that's well documented. But if there's anybody looking and wants to know how is DDB really, or people at the heart of the organization, that's where we put a lot of emphasis. And we're recruiting every day.
Great, even now. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Dick.
Yeah.
Now we'll hear from PT Black.